Welcome to the EOB podcast, where we talk about the weekend box office and the new openings this week. I'm Ben No, and joining me is Sen Duong. So, Sen, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
We just got past the 4-day holiday weekend.
Yeah, so should we just do the 4 day instead of the 3 day figures?
Yeah, sure, since we're past the 3 days.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so we made some predictions about the superhero movie Deadpool, best known for its rated R, due
hmm
to language and violence, and not exactly the first of its kind, but it's still, I think, notable for what it
Yeah,
achieved.
I guess what's different about Deadpool is, well, number one, like you said, the rating, and number two, he is a wisecracking superhero. Because the other rated R superhero movie was the two Punisher reboots.
And I have to say, the Punisher movies,
Uh-huh.
they're kind of, I guess, like substandard. Like they didn't put money and talent behind it. It's kind of like the superhero movies of old, where they think that it's just something for the kids, and well, not Punisher, but it's something that the people wouldn't take too seriously.
Yeah.
So I guess
Um,
that's why the lack of investment, I believe.
I'm not sure because the first one they did have Thomas Jane and they did have John Travolta. I mean, they did try to make something good, and you know what? I thought the one with Thomas Jane was a pretty good R-rated superhero movie, but they did kind of went back to. I mean, it was rated R, and it's a pretty different superhero movie. I guess the thing with the Punisher is he's not really a superhero; he's just a normal guy. He has no
Yeah,
superpowers.
right. He's kind of like Batman without the money.
Yeah, Batman without the money, and he's more Rambo than Batman. At least Batman in the movies, you can see him with his toys and equipment do some pretty heroic, super heroic things.
All
You
right,
know.
like Batman, he can be James Bond, for example, right? I travel to
Yeah,
exotic locations, cool gadget, toys, interesting villains.
right. But with the first Thomas Jane one, the budget was relatively, a modest budget.
Wait, we're talking about the Punisher, right? The one with Thomas Jane, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
The budget was fairly modest. I think it was made for less than 50 million. And Deadpool, surprisingly, was made for only 58 million. So they kind of went that route with this one too.
Well, if you believe in inflation, right? Deadpool is actually cheaper.
Yeah, that's true. If you take into account inflation, Deadpool is actually cheaper. And the Thomas Jane Punisher was made by Lionsgate. They don't spend too much on their movies. At the time, I thought it was the right studio to make that kind of movie, and I thought it was pretty good. Maybe people are just not that interested in a superhero movie with a guy with no superpowers. He's pretty much just your normal guy whose family got killed and he went out for revenge.
Well, I guess it just depends on the story, right? You can kind of make a case that the Bourne movies with
Uh,
Matt Damon, he's not exactly a superhero kind of, but even though he has some talents, right?
yeah,
But I guess it just depends on how it's done on the story. He doesn't necessarily need, superpowers, right?
yeah, yeah. But then Jason Bourne isn't a comic book character.
No, no,
Yeah,
he's based on one of these novels.
yeah, based on novel. Yeah, but the Punisher is like part of the. Is it Marvel or DC?
The Punisher is Marvel.
Yeah, see, he's part of the Marvel group of superhero characters. But
Right.
anyway, with Deadpool, it's rated R and it's probably as gory and as bloody as Punisher. But this one, it doesn't take itself too seriously because the character is constantly saying funny stuff and being a smart ass.
Right. Okay, we went a long time without telling the people how the movie did. How about you
Yeah.
take it from there?
Well, what were we predicting? I was predicting like 50 million for the 4 day weekend,
Yeah, let's
something like
see.
that.
Yeah, I said about 40 to 50 million. You went a bit higher. The
So let's
tracking
put it
number
this way.
said it was 70 plus.
You and I were a little bit pessimistic, so between 40 to 50 million or 60 million. Even the optimistic tracking numbers were at 70 million. And Deadpool did 150 million. It did way better than anyone expected. Twice the most optimistic projections. So this is
Yeah,
another one of those films that shatter all expectations. And it's not from Marvel, it's from Fox.
well, the Fox record is pretty good, actually.
Yeah, yeah, actually
Besides
Fox record
besides
is.
the Daredevil and Elektra
Yeah,
movies.
Yeah, they are pretty good. They have all the X-Men movies.
Fox is pretty good with their superhero properties, right? You know, the
Yeah.
X-Men movies with Bryan Singer and who else
Yep.
directing it. Now they have Deadpool. As goes to show, I mean, Deadpool is kind of like, you could say, the first of its kind. You know, it did way better than anyone's most optimistic projections. You know, nobody thought that a R-rated superhero movie would do this well. Even if it did well, right? It wouldn't be like 150 million well, right?
Yeah. Right.
For an
Right.
R-rated, jokey superhero movie.
That's well reviewed too.
Mhm.
84% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Okay,
Um,
and let's talk about what kind of records it broke.
sure, go ahead.
Okay, it's the best opening for a February movie, right? The previous holder was 50 Shades of Grey, right?
Hmm.
It has like the best opening in winter. You know,
Hmm.
February is still winter. Best 4-day president holiday weekend. Best R-rated opening.
Yep, a lot of records broken.
Yeah, and again, the budget is 58 million.
Yes, it's already a hugely successful movie in just 4 days for Fox. And here's the thing though, because Fox has always wanted its own sub Marvel cinematic universe based on characters in the X-Men universe.
Well, they want what Marvel got.
Yeah, they want what Marvel got, except they're doing it within the whole X-Men universe. As many characters as they can grab from their X-Men universe. And Deadpool is like the first one, right? Spin-off off of the well, there's Wolverine, and now Deadpool is really successful. The thing now is Marvel will probably not get the whole X-Men set of characters into their films, like Sony.
Oh, that's true because Sony, remember, didn't do that well with their Spider-Man movies. Each subsequent reboot
Right.
did way worse than the previous. I guess they want to tap into the larger market, and they kind of partner up with Marvel for
Yeah,
future Spider-Man movies, and we'll see that the character Spider-Man going into the Marvel universe.
yeah. Doesn't look like that will happen with Fox and their X-Men
Well,
properties.
wait, hold on there, hold on there. There is
Yeah,
precedence that these things happen. There have been instances where like Marvel characters going into DC stories lines and vice versa. They call those crossovers.
oh,
It
right,
happened
right.
before, so they could, you know, like the two studios, Fox and Marvel, could say, "Hey, let's do a crossover, like one movie." You know, you start one story with, for example, the X-Men, and you finish it up with whatever, and vice versa. So they
Yeah,
can
yeah,
cross promote. So that you have to watch both movies to find out the
yeah.
story. And that, you know, that is the thing with the comic books as well. That's how they cross promote titles,
Right, right, right. It is possible. The
right?
only thing is that with Fox being so successful now, there's no need for them to. Whereas with Sony, they haven't been successful with their films, and if they don't use Marvel's marketing power, they would lose out on those properties. They have to make a Spider-Man movie like almost every 2 years, or
Mhm.
they're gonna lose it to Marvel. And if they're gonna continue to lose monies on those films, they'll probably not make them.
Right, and their thing, you know, remember before they went over to Marvel and you know, asking them for help, they were planning on making movies about Sinister Six, you know,
Yeah,
which is a group of villains. I mean, they're kind of desperate there.
yeah. Sony and Fox were trying to do the same things. They wanted their own mini Marvel universe based on the properties that they have. Sony has Spider-Man, so they want to build a whole universe around Spider-Man. Fox has X-Men, and they want to build a whole universe around X-Men. Sony wasn't successful doing that, but it looks like Fox has been successful.
Well, to be fair, like Fox does have, I guess, a deeper talent pool to draw from. Like Bryan Singer, he kind of
Oh,
kind of
right.
started off everything, really, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You can say Sony used to have. She was the original director of Spider-Man.
Sam Raimi.
His Spider-Man movies were at the time the highest grossing comic book movies. The talent was there, but who knows? Maybe the direction and maybe like a lot of people said they just didn't really want to see Spider-Man rebooted so early.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
why? It's like they do endless reboot instead of building on what they have. That's one of their problems, I guess, is like they're stuck in the old ways. It's like, oh, they need to do continuous reboots with new people.
well, there's a lot of money to be made on the Spider-Man films, and they didn't want to let the property go. So they have to constantly crank out movies every 2 years.
Right, that's true, but they can build upon that instead of, oh, okay, we just reboot it
Yeah,
again. So, I mean, that's the
yeah,
main complaint, right?
Yeah,
right?
rebooting a franchise that's at the time only 5 years old.
Right, and they're doing it again.
Yeah, now they're
It's
doing
because
it again.
now they're going even younger with a different character, doing another
Yeah,
reboot.
right.
Now maybe they'll get it right this time. Yeah.
Yeah,
Again, I have to say the 150 million number, that's remarkable. In February, I said the money's always there, right?
yeah.
So we're not too far off from superhero movies every month.
You're right. You're right. Because next month there's Superman versus Batman, and then a few months after that there's Captain America: Civil War.
I mean, we're gonna start seeing superhero movies in January. I mean, forget about the award season. I mean, they're gonna do that
Yeah,
too, right? The award season is for publicists and everything to get rest and prepare,
yeah.
to go to all these fancy dinners. But now, hey, there's money to be made in every month, and I think they're gonna do it.
It makes you wonder when this whole market will be saturated. Like, if they have a comic book movie every month, will people finally be sick and tired of them?
I don't think so because like this is not a superhero movie anymore. I mean, even though it's kind of like a genre right now, Marvel's thinking is that it's just like a thriller or a action adventure or a comedy, just with different type of characters. That's what it really is. So yes, there is a space for this. It's not just like, oh, they're superheroes, right? It's just that hey, they might have powers, right? But hey, that's a comedy, you know.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I think if they go on that route, then it could be successful. Yeah, like you said, it depends on how they go about it. But one of the things with these comic book movies is there are only so many origin stories, which is probably one of the reasons why Fantastic Four tanked. Because people are like, we already seen the original. It's not like the first two Fantastic Four movies were that far off. And people were just like, can we not have another origin story? I mean, we already seen it.
Right. And hey, look at this, 58 million.
Yeah.
A superhero movie can be made for 58 million. So it doesn't need to be expensive. So they can keep churning this thing out at the price.
Well, see, you make a good point though. As long as they don't focus on your average like comic book movie where it's an origin story and this is how they got their powers, and if they go on different routes and like you said, don't treat this whole thing as a genre, just treat it as a subject matter, as a treasure trove of stories that you can mine. It could be, like you said, a comedy, a thriller, a family film, a romantic comedy, what have you,
Right.
or even a horror movie. I guess if
Right.
they treat it like that, they can have one of these comic book movies every month, and people might not be tired of
Yeah,
it.
true. And horror genre is kind of big in the comic books as well. So there you go.
Yeah.
All right, let's head on to number 2, occupied by Kung Fu Panda 3. It pulled in 26 million over 4 days. And
Yeah.
in 3 weeks, it crossed the 100 million mark.
Well, sure. One of the reasons is that kids get Monday off. But I'm surprised that even if you look at the 3-day figure, there's no drop off at all from this week and the previous week. In fact, I think it made a little bit more this week than last weekend. And it's not the only film in the top 10 that did that during this President's Day weekend. Now it looks like, hey, this film might actually do as well as Kung Fu Panda 2.
Isn't it kind of behind Kung Fu Panda 2 in the measurements, like in the same time frame? I'm not sure if it
Well,
do as well.
as of last week, it was behind, but as of this week, it might not be.
Okay.
We might take a look, because if it dropped off as much this week, it wouldn't have. But because it did just as much this week as the previous weekend, it might not be that far behind now.
It's still kind of 65 million behind. So we'll see if we can make up that ground.
Well, if you compare week to week, how many weeks is that?
Third week, Kung Fu Panda 2 is 126, about 20 some million behind, 26 million behind at the same time frame.
We'll have to see how well it does next week, because in its third week, Kung Fu Panda 3 actually made more than the third weekend of Kung Fu Panda 2. Well, if you count the 3-day, it would be like 20 million compared to 16.5 million.
Yeah, so it made some ground this holiday weekend because
Yeah.
I guess there's an extra day, and I guess people or families went out to the theaters, as seen by the low drop off and even positive percentage change in for some movies. And I don't know, we'll see next week because I think we'll go back to the regular drop off. By this measure, it's still going to be behind.
it looks like it's still behind, but now it's no longer that far behind.
Right,
Because
right.
I read some reports that that were like, oh, at this rate, Kung Fu Panda will probably top up at like 120 million, and it'll be way behind 165 million that the previous film made. But now it looks like it'll definitely get to 140, and
Hmm.
it might even get to 150. But 165, it'll be close. So now it's not doing nearly as bad as people expected.
All right, but again, we have to take it into account that Kung Fu Panda 3 is released in winter, right? Before Kung Fu
Yeah,
Panda 2 was released in the summer.
yeah,
So different time frames, and you can expect a lower take.
right, right.
Okay, moving on to number 3 is How to Be Single. It's the comedy starring Dakota Johnson and Rebel Wilson, and it pulled in about 20.6 million over 4 days.
Which is pretty much what we were expecting, right?
Yes, yes.
And what the industry was expecting. And it's one of the new releases over the weekend. And I think it's the only one that did equivalent to what people were expecting. Because Deadpool shattered everyone's expectations. And then the other movie that we're going to get to went below people's expectations.
Yes, I like to point out that everyone got Deadpool wrong because it is a first.
Yeah, but mostly everyone got How to Be Single right. So
They,
I guess now Dakota Johnson and Rebel Wilson they're now, if not in the A list, probably in the B list. They can open movies.
yes, and the budget's only 38 million, which is pretty decent for this movie. It's not that well reviewed. 48% on the tomato meter, a B cinema
Yeah,
score. So, you might expect a larger drop off in the second weekend.
it's okay. I mean, 47% is just kind of mixed,
Hmm.
and a B grade is just slightly below average. It didn't get a C, for instance. Probably not a huge drop off, but it probably won't hold up that well either.
That's what I'm saying. It won't
Yeah,
hold off. I'm expecting I don't know, about 50% drop off because remember, this is kind of like released during Valentine's as well.
yeah,
It's President Weekend, but it's also Valentine's Day. So you could see a
yeah,
slight bump for date
yeah,
movies.
yeah. So yeah, yeah, probably around 40 to 50%
Hmm.
drop off, but not like 60%. Like,
No, no, no.
and number 4 is Zoolander 2, the third wide release over the weekend. It made 16 million. It stars Ben Stiller, Owen Wilson, and a bunch of other people. Will Ferrell is in it. Penelope Cruz. It's one of those films where the first one wasn't exactly a huge hit at the box office. It opened to around the same amount, and they ended up making like 45 million.
Hmm.
But so many people mention this film, so many people quote from it. You have celebrities, you have sports stars, you have just film fans in general. People constantly mention Blue Steel and all these other things. And with all that said, with it having such a huge cultural impact, people were expecting this to do a lot better, but instead it only made 16 million.
The first movie didn't do that well theatrically. It
Mm-hmm.
made its money on home video. And I get a feeling that people kind of laughing along with the movie, kind of make fun of the fashion industry, for
Mm-hmm.
example, right? The tricky thing about making a sequel to a cult classic or a movie that becomes popular on home video is that that success doesn't necessarily translate to the sequel theatrically as well.
It depends. Most of the time, they do kind of like the Austin Powers movies. Because
Mhm.
the first Austin Power did about slightly better than the first Zoolander,
Mhm.
and it became, it made such a huge cultural impact that when the sequel came out, it was breaking records. The first Austin Powers only made about 50 million theatrically, which at the time was a modest hit because the budget wasn't that high, kind of like Zoolander, the first Zoolander. But
Mhm.
when the sequel came out, it ended up opening to like 60 million and making like 200 plus million.
Yeah,
So
with the sequel, I mean, they everyone won a piece, like Tom Cruise, Steven Spielberg, and Beyonce.
yeah, so it has a similar setting with Zoolander 2. The only problem is Zoolander 2, some people mentioned that this might be one of the reasons why it didn't do as well is it's 15 years later. And in Zoolander 2, everyone wants a piece of this sequel.
Mhm.
Pretty much from what I read, there are a lot of celebrity cameos
Okay,
in this
okay,
film.
okay.
And it's just one of those things for some reason, maybe it's too long, or maybe it's just not a very good movie, 22% on the tomato meter. Maybe because of the huge expectations, it disappointed. Whereas, the second Austin Powers actually met expectations. This one way underwhelmed, and maybe that's why it didn't do as well. I think the problem with Zoolander 2 and Zoolander is this might be one of those one joke movies. It's only good for one movie. Whereas Austin Powers, because it was making fun of James Bond, and there's a gazillion James Bond movies. So it's one of those movies that are easy to sequelize because it wasn't a one joke premise. Whereas Zoolander there's only enough material for one movie.
Right, and when you get down to it, the
Uh,
sequel is really a joke about being old.
yeah, despite the fact that it has such a huge following, the sequel just didn't deliver, or maybe you just can't deliver on a one joke premise.
Right, right. It's pretty much it got stale. I mean, the joke.
Yeah,
It was funny the first time, second time, not so much.
I mean you can only do Blue Steel so many times.
Right, right. All right, let's move on to number 5, The Revenant. It pulled in 7.8 million over 4 days. Right now, it's 160 million.
Yeah, along with Kung Fu Panda is one of those films that didn't drop by much. And if you count the 4-day weekend, it actually improved on last weekend,
So,
despite losing almost 1,000 screens.
right, I mean, it's just that people got day off and they try to catch up on the movies that they might have missed out.
Yeah, right. Ditto for Star Wars, which is number 6, made 7.6 million, and it's at 916 million after 9 weeks. Despite losing about 500 screens, it actually made more this week than last week.
Yeah, so the movie looks like it'll close around what, 940, 950?
Possibly.
Yeah.
Let me see, worldwide is over 2 billion. It depends on how it does next weekend, though. I'm not sure how the weekend following President's Day is. Maybe next weekend, every movie will drop off by 50%. Who knows?
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure.
So if you follow that kind of trajectory, it might still get to 940. I think they should definitely re-release this just so that it can get to 1 billion.
You know they will. You know? They will release it. George Lucas set the tone. He gave Disney the playbook that hey, they could change a little thing, tweak a little thing here and there, and they could have release it as a completely different movie, and people will pay bucks for it. And of course, the movie, the next movie, Star Wars Episode 8. Well, they'll re-release The Force Awakens, so that people can catch up and refresh themselves.
Right. Instead of watching it on Blu-ray.
Right.
Let's move on to number 7. Hail Caesar. It made 7.2 million over the weekend and is one of the few films in the top 10 that actually experienced a drop off of 36%, which in any other weekend is a good hold. But when every film in the top 10 this weekend experienced addition rather than subtraction, this is actually kind of bad. So Hail Caesar made 22 million after 2 weeks at a budget of about 22 million. So it looks like it won't lose money for the studio, but I think it underperformed.
Yeah, I mean, given the talents involved, right? The Coen brothers, well-regarded directors, George Clooney, Scarlett Johansson, Channing Tatum, on and on and on and on. You expect this movie, just for stargazers, people would come out with this, but as we said, insider movies are a tough sell. And in a weekend where people are catching up to movies, and this movie actually got some additional theaters as well, it actually has a huge drop.
Yeah, especially compared to the rest of the films in the top 10. Which actually, which made more this weekend than the previous weekend. This movie actually made less.
So it's like it's a negative. People doesn't want it. They actively try to avoid it.
Right. And like you said, with cinema score, I think this one had a C cinema score. And when you have C cinema score, especially for something like a comedy, and it's not a horror film, you usually expect huge drop-offs. All right, let's move on to number 8. The Choice made about 6 million, about the same amount as last weekend, and after 2 weeks is at 14 million. It's a Nicholas Sparks movie that didn't hit.
Well, this is the worst performing Nicholas Sparks adaptation. It's very poorly reviewed. I mean, 7%. It was 8 before. Now it dropped even more. Drop a percentage point to 7% on the tomato meter. And the B+ cinema score is kind of average. So, yeah, I mean, fans who watch it thought it's an okay movie.
Right. I'm surprised it was released by Lionsgate. So Lionsgate's getting into the Nicholas Sparks business too. I guess it makes sense for them because they're into low budget, modest budgeted films. And you can make these movies with a modest budget.
Well, yeah, remember Lionsgate is a genre house really before. The horror
Yeah,
movies, romances,
action films, the
action
Jason
films.
Statham movies,
Right,
even
right, right.
Animals.
Right. It's only a couple years before where they hit it big with the Catching Fire movie.
Yeah, well, that's mainly
The Hunger
because they
Games.
bought.
Yeah.
Yeah, mainly because they bought Summit. Right now, it seems like they're getting into everything. They're getting into animation too.
They are, but they're taking the
The low budget route,
low and slow approach.
which might not be bad because even for a film like Shaun the Sheep, they made money. The film ended up only making 20 million at the box office, but they bought the rights for just 2 million. And with some marketing, they said their break-even point was at 15 million. Out of a $2 million investment, they made 5 million. That's only theatrical. That's not even counting video.
I mean, it's not a sexy business, but it's, as a
It's a
business,
profitable
it's
business.
profitable. Yeah, right, right.
Yeah.
Okay, so number 9 is Ride Along 2. It pulled in 5 million over 4 days. And
Mhm.
it right now is at 83 million after 5 weekends.
At this point, it might get to 90. It's still far off from the first film's 135 million or somewhere around there.
Hmm.
Um, but at a budget of only 40 million, we'll definitely probably see another one.
Right, right. All right, let's round out the top 10 with The Boy. It pulled in 3.5 million over 4 days. It's one of those January horror movies that has a surprising hold. Rare for a horror movie to stay in the top 10 for 4 weeks.
Yeah, right, exactly. And it's already made about 31.5 million on a budget of just 10 million. So a very successful film for STX.
I mean, of
Um,
course, no one would remember this movie,
uh-huh.
come next week, right? But hey, it did its job.
Yep, did his job, made his money. Maybe that's the thing is maybe these cleaner, non-bloody, non-gory horror films. I guess you can call these clean horror movies. Like with horror films, the more gory ones, they
Hmm.
usually drop like a break on the second weekend. But these cleaner horror films with no blood and guts tend to hold up better.
Maybe that's what people are seeing as well. Because, like, hey, this week there's another horror movie that's released in the same vein. We'll get to that.
Right.
That rounds out the top 10. Let's move
Uh-huh.
on to the new openings this weekend. We have 3: Race, Risen, and The Witch.
Should we start with race?
Yeah, Race is a story about Jesse Owens, the Olympian who, I guess, won a gold medal at the Berlin Games before World War II. Stars Stephen James, Jeremy Irons, Jason Sudeikis,
Mhm.
William Hurt.
The title actually ambiguous title, but it actually has multiple meanings.
Yes, it has dual meaning, right? The race,
Yeah,
because there is racism during that time, and
yeah,
he's fighting against that. And of course, he's a runner. He's participate in track and fields.
yeah. A very good title.
Right. Yes, they're talking about race while
Yeah,
talking about race.
yeah, right. And usually I'm against these generic, film titles, but this one is actually very good.
So, what do you think, or how do you think it
Um,
will do?
I don't know. I've seen the trailer, and yeah, I guess it is timely because of all these Black Lives Matter movement and
Hey, and
uh,
hey, it's Black History Month as
yeah,
well.
and this Black History Month. Let's not forget that. So it's a timely release. Although with these films, the openings tend to be around not too high, like 10 to 20 million. What's the one about the baseball one about Robinson?
Oh, 42, 42.
Yeah, Harrison Ford was in it.
Yeah, 42. The title was 42.
And that one did really well. But then you also have Selma, which did only modestly well. And
Yeah.
Race, I have a Selma vibe.
Yeah, and track and field, I feel that it's not as exciting as baseball.
Right,
And
yeah.
Stephen James, is that the guy's the lead actor? He's not Chad Boseman, so he doesn't exactly have the same draw, I feel.
Chad Boseman didn't have much of a draw either.
Well, but he was in a couple movies, and I guess people kind of, well,
Yeah.
before that's
Yeah, maybe like you said, he has more notoriety than
yeah, yeah. So this movie is kind of difficult to judge. Really, it's not in exactly the same. When we see like African movies targeting or about the African American people, like social issues, those doesn't tend to do well. It's only when they are more genre films You know, action
Yeah, more about the
adventure, you know,
current.
comedies. Those tend to do better.
Yeah, right. Like Why Along, like
Hmm.
the Why Along movies, or even the was it the
Or thrillers, even thrillers, right?
yeah, the
Those tend to do
thrillers,
better than these more drama-based movies.
more history-based movies.
Right, right.
Although we do have what is it, the can't name any of these movies.
Well, exactly, right?
No,
You
but they
know,
did really well though. What is it, the Help? Yeah, like the Help, for instance, did really well.
yeah, but that's not really that's more of not target toward the African American audience.
Wait, what's the other one about the Butler, for instance? But those were unexpected surprise hits.
No, but then you have to see who's in them, right?
Yeah,
This one, well, there's William Hurt.
yeah, but I mean the other ones didn't have like people who actually draw in audiences either.
Well, you know, what Forrest Whitaker, you know, all those
Yeah,
people.
he's not a box office
He's not a
draw.
box office draw, but he's does have a cult following. You know, he does have a
Yeah,
following.
yeah,
Whereas
he has a following.
these guys doesn't.
Yeah, these guys.
No,
Yeah,
they don't.
I mean everyone knows who Forrest Whitaker is.
I
He's
mean,
a
Oprah was in Butler, right? You know, Oprah has a huge TV show. She
yeah.
would say, "You
Wait,
watch
was
it,
she
you
in the
watch it, you watch it." You
Okay, yeah,
know.
yeah. I thought she just produced. Maybe she was in it too. I haven't
Well,
seen it.
well, even if she produced, she can tell her,
But
you know,
yeah,
sizable
yeah.
audience to go buy a ticket
Right.
and
Yeah.
win a car. You know.
Yeah. That's the thing. Like you said, the reliable and dependable African American based movies, or the comedies, and some of these thrillers, and even movies like the one about the NWA.
Straight out Compton.
Yeah, Straight Outta Compton. Uh, like those that deal with more modern day events have been more reliable and dependable and more predictable, I guess you can say, in
Right.
terms of the box office. Whereas movies like The Butler, The Help, Selma, 42, those are difficult to gauge. They can do well. They can do Selma business, which is modestly well at 50 million, or they can do The Butler or The Help business at 170 million. But race, I'm not sure. I have a Selma vibe to it. As a
Right. I'm just
Selma
saying.
vibe.
Exactly. It's based on who's in it. I don't see this film doing, you know, like the Butler or the Hope business. I feel that it's gonna do somewhere between 10 to 15 million because hey, Deadpool, it's really big right now.
Black History Month, maybe give it a slight bump. So maybe I'll inch closer to 15 million.
All right, so we're kind of in agreement here. 10 to
Yeah.
15, you 15, so you're at the upper end of 15 million.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just because I guess like history dramas or kind of
Yeah. It's tough. I mean, even Selma about Martin Luther King
mhm.
only ended up opening at 11 million. And I have that kind of vibe here.
You're right, and that's Martin Luther King, right? And this
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
is even further. You know, this one is Jesse Owen about Olympics.
Yeah. So, you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if it made like 11 or 12 million.
All right, let's go to Risen.
Another faith-based movie. This one about a non-believer of Jesus Christ, and of course, it's about the resurrection of Jesus Christ. I don't know. These movies they have their ups and downs, and I think this one. Yeah, what do you think?
So this movie stars Ralph Fiennes as one of the Roman soldiers, right? This movie takes place after they kill Jesus. They put him in a tomb, and they discovered that his body was missing. You know, the tomb was open, the body was missing. The movie is interesting in the sense that they filmed it in a way. It's kind of like you know, that Tommy Lee Jones movie where he hunts for an escapee, right? This soldier went on a hunt. Okay, they know that guy's dead. But they find that he's alive, and they don't know why. They have to reconcile these conflicting realities, I guess.
Yeah, this one they actually have Ralph Fiennes, who's a really good actor. So they actually got talent for this, and it has 2 reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, and they're both positive.
Yeah, it's not one of those overbearing Christian
Yeah.
movies, I feel. They say it's from the viewpoint of a non-believer, right? You know,
Uh-huh.
him and his I guess posse went on to, you know, to search for this guy. So it is kind of like a thriller in a sense that, hey, you know, we're hunting for this guy. Have you seen this man, etc., etc.? You know, how can he be alive? When he's
Right,
dead,
right.
confirmed dead. I don't see this movie doing well either.
They have actual talent attached to it. It has Ralph Fiennes. It's directed by Kevin Reynolds. He did a bunch of Kevin Costner movies when Kevin Costner was huge.
Waterworld, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
Yeah.
So it's pretty much he can direct these big budget movies.
Yeah, director with a resume and an actor with a resume. Yeah, who knows? I think maybe this one might do a little bit better than some of the previous films. So, because normally I would say, hey, 5 million, but I think this one might do a little bit better. I'm thinking 8 million.
I'm actually going higher.
You're going
Surprisingly.
higher? Okay.
I'm going higher
Right.
because it is a big budget movie, right? It looks
Is
like
it
it
big
has
budget?
money. Well, it looks like it has money behind it. I mean, it's cinematically,
Yeah.
right? It feels better. It is an action movie, it is kind of like a thriller. So I think it has more appeal than that, even though there is a message behind this movie. I think it could do 10 to 15.
You're pretty much going 10 to 15 with Waze and Risen.
Yes.
I'm going 8 on Risen. I'm going 15 on Waze. Let's see where we go on The Witch.
Okay. And The Witch. So it is another horror movie that takes place, it seems like, from during the colonial times, right? And I watched the trailer. I'm not sure what it's about.
It is pretty creepy though. The trailer.
Is it? It seems like they
Yeah.
just flash some images at you, and I don't know who or what. Is there a witch? I assume, judging by the title, that there is a witch, or someone is accused of the witch. I think there might be some possession going on. I'm not sure. As I said, the trailer is kind of confusing.
Well, it's one of those trailer that I feel like is supposed to do what it does, which is to tease you, to make you want to seek more, and it doesn't give everything away. So I actually like the trailer. It's kind of creepy. It doesn't give anything away. It makes you wonder, like, hey, what's going on here? And it is very well reviewed, 85% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is, for horror films is especially high.
Okay.
And I think it won some awards at the Sundance Film Festival.
I don't know.
About 10 with this too.
Yeah, I feel kind of like the title. It's kind of bare bones to me. There's not a lot to latch on. So I think this movie only appeals to the people who are curious, I guess. So I don't see this movie doing that well.
Depends on what you think about doing well. Like, it doesn't look like a super high budget movie. I think they ate 10 million over the weekend. That's considered pretty well.
Yeah, I'm thinking about in that range too. I've been 5 to 10.
5 to 10, yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking that it could do about 5 to 10 million.
I'm kind of around the same mark for every one of them.
Yeah, so we're not expecting any of the new releases to pull in over 20 million or 20 or over, because I think the bulk of the box office will still go to Deadpool, with Kung Fu Panda 3 and The Revenant and Star Wars still holding up well.
Well, The Witch, I'm thinking about 10 million. Risen, I'm thinking about 8 million. The Race, I'm thinking about 15 million.
Yeah, so we're kind of pretty close on these numbers.
Yeah.
Like, give or take a couple millions. We're not that far off. It's
Right.
not like Deadpool off.
Yeah, I guess we'll see how well Deadpool holds up next weekend. And good word of mouth. I think the cinema score for Deadpool is at A. It might hold up really well next week.
Yeah. The question is, as you said, how well Deadpool will hold up. But hype built upon hype. Since this movie is kind of hyped up right now because it's made 150 million over 4 days, an R-rated superhero movie. This is a movie that people are saying, "Oh my God!" The R-rated movie, superhero Deadpool comedy, and it did that much. I think people would kind of want to check it out to see how it is for themselves.
Yeah. Now that it did so well, like you said, it might bring in people outside of this genre. It might pique their interest. Maybe next weekend we'll see more of that demographic, the non-comic book demographic, maybe.
All right, we're done for this week.
Yes, this weekend's movie is not too exciting because of how well Deadpool is. Everyone's just looking to see how much more it makes next week.
All right, come back next week. I guess we'll talk more Deadpool.
Okay, see you guys next week.